following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates. It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media.
The Rick Jensen Show on 101.7 FM, 1150 AM, WDEL, and streaming to your smart speaker and mobile device.
Hey, I'm a happy camper client of Dan White and Associates. I think whatever Dan says should represent our views. Well, it certainly represents mine. So after the news at 1:30, Dan, or it might be Andrew Wood or Dan Simon from Dan White and Associates, calls in with tips, knowledge, because these guys are experts at retirement planning as financial advisors. Let me get to Dan right now on the phone. Dan, thanks for calling in, sir.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Rick.
Yeah, so let me see. It's, hi, we're the government. We're here to help. Uh-oh.
Quoting your inner Ronald Reagan, huh?
Well, there you go again. Pretty much. What have they done to us this time, Dan?
Yeah, so it's interesting. As you know, we had the Secure Act in 2019, and then they came out with the Secure Act 2.0 in 2023. They come out with these acts, and then they say, well, we'll give you further guidance down the road. Well, they finally came out with the final regs about a week ago, and they did put a snag in there for a minor child who inherits an IRA. So we've talked about this, I think, a little bit in the past. So if you inherit an IRA now, you can't stretch it over your life expectancy. You have to empty it in 10 years.
Yeah.
If you inherit it from a parent. If it's a brother or sister, you might be able to do life expectancy if you're not more than 10 years younger than the brother or sister. But most of the situations we run into, it's parents leaving IRA money to children.
Okay.
So under Secure Act 2.0, they said, well, you got to have it empty in 10 years, and they said if mom or dad was 73 years old and was taking RMDs, then you have to take RMDs as well during the first 9 years and empty it in the 10th. But if mom or dad was an RMD age, if they were under 73, then you don't have to take any RMDs. You can just let it sit, but you have to have it empty in the 10th year. So that's the way we understood it. And then the other thing was if you were a minor child, let's say you were 11 years old and you inherited an IRA, then you could stretch it. You had to take distributions. You could stretch it for life expectancy. Well, actually stretch it till you were majority age. So in this case, you could stretch it for 10 years, and then when you turn 21, the 10-year rule would apply. So
Really?
we always thought that the 21-year-old would not have to take any RMDs. Well, that is not the case.
Ugh.
So what they've come out and said was, even though the parent might have died well before the required beginning date for their RMDs, because the child was already taking RMDs, they have to continue them over the 10-year period. So I'll give you an example. In 2025, Ella, age 10, inherits an IRA from her mother who's 36. Ella is a proper eligible designated beneficiary and can stretch distributions over a single life expectancy. That goes on for 11 years until Ella turns 21 in 2036. And because she has reached age 21, the 10-year rule then applies. That means Ella must empty the inherited IRA bucket by December 31st, 2046, by the end of the 10th year after she reached age 21. But even though her mother died well before her RMD age of 73, she died at 36, Ella has to continue to take annual RMDs for years 1 through 9 of the 10-year period because her RMDs had started. The rules require that they continue.
You know, I don't like to use the word suck on the air, but it just draws a great wind, and it's really unfortunate for these kids that this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Before they had the Secure Act, a lot of kids were like, "All right." I mean, it was a great wealth transfer tool. But I mean, if you didn't spend all your IRA and your kids weren't as well off as you were, you could leave it to them, and that became, a quasi-retirement plan for your kids.
Yeah.
And now it's not, because now it's like, okay, you got to empty it in 10 years. So if you inherit it when you're 60, by the age of 70, the thing's got to be empty.
Well, so the real tragedy here is that inside the IRA, it's just, think of it, I've explained this to actually a couple of friends of mine, said, well, I have an IRA at a bank. Well, what's it in? What's in an IRA? No. I mean, yes, it's an IRA at the bank.
How's it invested?
And they said, what do you mean? And I said, okay, you think of it as a bucket, and you can put a money market fund in that bucket. You can put a money
Mutual
market
funds.
money market account from a bank in that bucket. You could put an insured contract from an insurance company, like an annuity or something like that, in that bucket. You could put stocks in that bucket. The whole thing is that bucket does not get touched by the IRS. You don't have to pay taxes on that at all until you're 59 and a half years old, when you start taking it out if you want to, or whatever. And when you compound the interest, you're making a lot more money over, say, 20 or 30 years, if that money is not taxed, than if you have to pull money out or have it taxed every year. That's why I think it's really tragic for, like, say, the 11-year-old Ella that you're talking about, because, she could have a lot more money, even if she was taking it out for college. And I have a question about that, too, or a suggestion. But she would have a lot more money when she retires, as opposed to the government saying, no, we need your money more than you need your money, so we're going to make a law that steals your money as an 11-year-old kid. I think that's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we actually we present this example to people where if you left $100,000, this is under the old laws where you could stretch it over your life expectancy. But if you left $100,000 to a 1-year-old, and I think Ed Slott put this together, but he said if you use an 8% rate of return, all right, the 1-year-old has to take a required minimum distribution under the old law when they're 2, the year after the account owner died. But the RMD for a 2-year-old is very, very tiny because they got 90 years to live.
Yeah.
By the time the 1-year-old ended up dying, they ended up withdrawing over $8 million out of one IRA account worth $100,000.
And what was
the
annual calculated interest rate on that?
8%.
That's reasonable. Over a lifetime, that is
over
reasonable.
90 years, that's reasonable. Yeah. So it was kind of, and it was incredible when you tell people those numbers. 100,000 turns into $8 million. And I say, it was so good they got rid of it, so now it's 10 years, and you got to empty it in 10 years. So it really did screw up a lot of retirement planning for a lot of people.
It is terrible. And I'm sure that the accountants / actuaries who work for the federal government recognize this, and they say, wow, there's hundreds of billions of dollars that we can take from children because, their parents decided they wanted them to have some of their retirement income as an inheritance. Why don't we just take that candy from the kids' trick-or-treat bag, and then we can use it for ourselves? That's how ugly I see this thing. That it really is nasty what they're doing to kids like this.
Well, you know what else throws me, Rick, is they're kind of sending mixed signals, because if you inherit an IRA, like in this example, they want it empty in 10 years, so they want to get the money out of the IRA quicker. But at the same point in time, the last two acts pushed the RMD age out longer. Mm-hmm. So instead of having to start taking money out of your IRA at 70 and a half, now if you were born in 1960 or later, you can wait till 75. So it's like, why are you forcing it out of beneficiaries' hands quicker, but you're letting us leave it in our own plan longer?
You're right.
It doesn't seem to make sense.
It doesn't make sense. I'm really glad that you call in and talk about these things once a week after the news at 1:30 on Wednesdays, because people aren't aware of this. This is real-world experience, and it encourages people like me, and I hope others, to talk to our lawmakers when we get a chance to. And here in Delaware, we can, and say, look, you got this stupid IRA rule, and it's really cheating children out of money. Do you think it's important? And if so, what would you do about this? It's just, those questions are just that simple. I have another question about this. Yeah. Is there any language, or you talk about language, of allowing kids to take this money out penalty-free for college, trade school, community college, any sort of advanced learning?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When you have an inherited IRA, there's no 59.5 restrictions. So, they have required minimum distributions, but you can take money out of an inherited IRA in any amount at any time, and there's no 10% early withdrawal penalty or anything like that. So, we run into that quite a bit. Like if a wife were to inherit an IRA from a husband, they not 9 times out of 10 you're just going to do a spousal rollover and let them continue to defer.
Yeah.
But if the wife thinks they might need that money and they're under 59 and a half, because if it's their own IRA, they're going to get banged with a penalty. Sometimes it makes sense to keep it as an inherited IRA because then they have access to it without the early withdrawal penalty.
You know, I regret.
So to answer your question, whether it's medical, whether it's college, it doesn't really matter what it's for. In an inherited IRA, there's no penalties on taking the money out early.
I regret asking that question. Because I know that there are bureaucrats who listen to this program, and they're going to hear that and go, damn, we missed some of that kid's money. We need to steal some more.
Yeah.
I have a...
But there's no... Yeah, when you have an inherited IRA, it's again, they tell you what the minimum is to take out, but there's no maximum. But the bottom line is whatever you take out is going to be taxable. And right after the law changed, we had a girl who was about 28. She inherited an $800,000 IRA from her mother. And, technically she wasn't required to take anything out because mom was only 61. But that didn't make a lot of sense because if we don't take anything out and the 800 grows to $1.5 million, then in the 10th year you got to empty $1.5 million. So it made sense. It's like, why don't we take 10% a year out and just try to spread this whole thing over 10 years?
Does that work?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have her taking out about 85,000 a year every year, and then, then in the 10th year it'll be a manageable amount. It won't be a big number she's got to pay tax on.
So when you calculate this though, is there more money at the end of those 10 years if you're just taking it out bit by bit like that? Or can you just take it out and I don't know what you're going to put it in these days?
Yeah, there's more money because think about it this way. If she adds $80,000 to her income, I think she was making probably around $80,000. So she's going to be in a 22% bracket.
Right.
But think about it. If she didn't touch it at all and the 800 grew to $1.5 million and you take $1.5 million out in the 10th year, now you're in a 40% bracket. So
good thinking. See?
Yeah.
That's why people love you, Dan. Seriously.
Trying to save them money.
Exactly. Well, it's important, especially right now where everything's so expensive. And, we're doing the digital coupon clipping, as it were. Go to the grocery store on Tuesdays if you're over 60, or 55, actually, I think, at one place. Yeah, so all that stuff, it all matters. Dan White and Associates. Give him a call, 888-690-8820. He's not going to charge you to talk to you. 888-690-8820. Dan White and Associates. Also, you host On the Money Sunday mornings right here on this fine radio station, 1150 AM, 1017 FM, WDEL. What's on topic for Sunday at 7?
Well, it's just like we're talking about today. They came out with this latest guidance on these inherited IRAs, so we're going to talk about all the nuances on the new guidance from the IRS on inherited IRAs this coming Sunday. So.
Okay. I like it when people just call you and say, Dan, fix this.
That happens a lot, though.
I know, because all these rules, all these laws, they change, and if somebody is used to working under one a set of rules and laws for many, many years, and they're just regular folk, they don't, study this like you do every single day. Dan, can you fix this? And I know that people come to you with that. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
You have a great day, Rick.
Go Phils.